What a strange idea to end such a day with Zionism. I don't know, for Z, I would choose certainly Zebra for Josephine Baker House, or just Zoo for Weissenhof. But anyway, I have to do what I have to do, and I also understood it as an attempt to talk or to relate somehow the topics to Stuttgart, to Weissenhof. So I'm trying to force here an argument about certain relationships between Stuttgart and Tel Aviv, or more generally between, or about the effect of this modernist showcase about what should properly be called settler colonialism. So I'll try to do it briefly and to stick to the text so it doesn't take me too long. But precisely at the brief moment of history when modern architecture becomes a stigma, when it is described as degenerate for its shameful Semitic origins, Jewish or Arab, it appears like a phoenix on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean. And I'm not referring to the way it appears, as we've seen in Cairo and other places in the Arab world, as singular, but actually to the pervasiveness within the Zionist or the Jewish community in Palestine in the 30s. But was it there before, in the 1910s or 20s? A letter from Hannes Meyer to his former protege at Bauhaus, Ariel Sharon, inquires. I would be interested in the character of Jewish construction enterprise. He's talking about jüdische Aufbau. It's a difficult term to translate. In your country, are there any distinctive attempts to establish a Jewish national style, even if it were just exquisite kitsch of the highest order? Okay. Now, presentation. If you would help me, it would be nice. And I'll do the talking.
I hope it's.
Okay, the next one? Yeah, good.
Here.
So anyway, the answer was never found, but the simple question, the simple answer to this question would be, yes, there were many attempts during the 1910s and 20s to create specifically a jüdische Aufbau or Jewish national style. In Palestine, it looks like this. Yes, exquisite kitsch, indeed, a lot of it. All kinds of attempts to hybridize Jugendstil, Orientalisms, biblical fantasies, and so on. This is Casino in Tel Aviv. This is how the city looks. All like this. This is a real building, and this is how it looks in the drawings. But something dramatic happens around 1930. Something that I think that proper historiography cannot really simply explain, even though we have many explanations. This building becomes this. The same building, the same architect. After 1930, a building will not get a building permit if it doesn't, if it's not modernist, or if he wants to do an addition, if it doesn't sort of redress itself in this way. Or another example, we just found it just for this presentation, by this architect, Sem Barkai, who's this kind of architect, and he's asking after in the 30s to add a story to the building, and this is what he's doing. In this case, probably not because he's forced by the authorities, but because he's going to Le Corbusier to work for him for several months, comes back as a newborn modernist. Now, so around okay. I'll do it quickly. So until 1930, there's practically no modernist building in Palestine or in Tel Aviv. from 1930 on, a building, if it wants to get built, to get a permit, must be a modernist, and all the buildings look like this. We have many versions of this, and this is by the same architect, They're not only in the city, but also in the rural, or I would say even mainly in the rural. We see amazing modernist buildings in the villages. So almost simultaneously with the American proclamation of the international style, the reframing of modernism as an extra or exterritorial order, it was endorsed as an ordinary marker across the Zionist ideological, sectorial, territorial, and cultural divide. It becomes essentially a national style, or as Jacob this morning would say, a Zionist fiction. Civil servants, ideologues, developers, poets, beaux-arts architects all acquired an instant modernist savoir-faire. Cosmopolitan whiteness provided a common ground for the various groups of settlers, émigrés, and exiles. It infused an ambience of acculturation and aesthetic building, and above all, instilled a sense of elsewhereness. By the way, nothing, if I relate it to the presentations before me, nothing here that has to do with efficiency, nothing that has to do with system theories, even nothing that has to do with health, okay? Okay, these are the examples. Okay. Now, Julius Posner, the brilliant German Jewish critic who exiled in Palestine for several years, was puzzled by what he saw. In a letter to Le Corbusier, he writes, "In Tel Aviv, apartment buildings are crowded on small plots facing toward narrow, dusty streets, but with a modern pretensions." Looking at these houses, one like to say, your architects left Stuttgart in 1926. For him, it's 1926. Here's the connection that I'm making. He stopped at the latest trend of the day before yesterday. He never understood that Palestine is not Silesia, and that architecture has progressed since 1926. So for Posner, Tel Aviv is a collection of awkward misappropriations and ludicrous anachronisms. He's appalled by the mediocrity and plagiarism, but he fails to see that modern architecture may have finally fulfilled itself as mass culture. Yes, of course, it is merely proverbial, plainly habitable, and certainly the trend of the day before yesterday. But isn't that the best possible destiny for the European avant-garde? Posner mentions Stuttgart of 1926, alluding to, of course, to Mrs. presentation of the initial model for the Werkmüll exhibition in Weitenhof of housing project with the single directive of a flat roof. But inevitably, mentioning Weitenhof modernist showcase is also alluding to the acceleration of Heimatschutz's demagogy in architectural debate by Nazi critics such as Paul Schulze-Naumburg and Paul Bonatz, who began to apply nationalist and racial theories to architectural historiography and building analysis. For them, Neue Sachlichkeit is as rootless as the flat roof is roofless, dachlos. Schulze-Naumburg, for instance, wrote that the modernist house is in effect a stationary sleeping car which could be moved according to the whims. Sorry. Sorry. I lost myself. Anyway, he describes it. He describes Weissenhof as a place that fits the nomads of the metropolis, who have long lost the idea of their native land and are not at all acquired with the idea of the parental, let alone the ancestral home. Just so we don't have a mistake, who were those nomads of the metropolis? He writes, these people offer models which no longer keep us under German skies, and on German soil, but displace us to the edge of the desert or into the Oriental setting. So the roofless house then was constructed as a Trojan horse, I would say Oriental horse, on German soil. And Mrs. entire project, according to Paul Bonatz, looked like a suburb of Jerusalem. At that very moment, in Tel Aviv, the suburb of Jerusalem, the Zionists take a decisive side in the war of the roofs. Posner, once again, is haunted by this occurrence of belated modernism. In a 1938 long and beautiful article about Jewish architecture in Palestine for the Swiss magazine Das Werk, he writes, "We have stated what the Jews did not bring with them. They did, however, bring something, at least the last wave of immigration. In Germany, the architecture of flat roofs, ribbon windows, cantilever slabs, corner windows, stairwell slits, and dynamic cornices has been called Sukkot architecture." I'm not sure that you approve of the translation. And an attempt was made to link it to our Oriental bloodline. The truth is that here it appears foreign and European, here in Palestine. But it is also true to say that the Jewish architects and the Jewish public are very fond of modern architecture. It still appeals as progressive to them at the point when, in fact, it is becoming historical. In 1938, the modern style overcame the Eastern shtetl, as well as the attempts at a national architecture that were made before the war. Inevitable image. Okay, if we follow, and I'm coming to the end, if we follow Posner's logic, we can see that the act of self-stereotyping, of embracing Sukkot architecture as one's own mark of Cain, operates on several symbolic registers. First, it provides the Jews with an architectural myth of origin. Their alleged traceless nomadism finally has a proper object, a building culture, even if it is merely the makeshift sukkah. Second, the modern style, as Posner indicates, is an elegant way out of the visual ghetto of the Eastern European shtetl and its reincarnation in the eclectic search for a Jewish national style in Palestine. In other words, the expulsion from Heimat is also, for the Jews, the exodus from diaspora and the eventual prospect of universal assimilation. And finally, while the trope Sukkot architecture authenticates the Jews as Orientals, as epic returnees, the pedant image of white architecture safeguards their estrangement in the Orient. It seems alien and European here, Posner's tautologically comments on the specter of the modern style in Palestine, only to overturn the Nazi allegation that the modern style seems alien and Oriental here in Stuttgart, in Germany. And so the postcard Araberdorf, by incarnating ad nauseum in the first Hebrew city, becomes a prophecy of the Jews' eternal exile in the Levant, the colonial remoteness. Against the grain of history, modern architecture becomes Jewish by guilt, by negation, by masquerade, and by conformity. The Jewish architects and the Jewish public are very fond of this architecture. Thank you.